class in particular, and that is the engineer. Any of his buildings, whether it be a sentry, dispenser, or teleporter, can be sapped, which temporarily disables their functionality and slowly decreases their health until it drains all the way down to 0 and self-destructs. When it comes to being a good team player, the sapper is absolutely essential, as you are the best equipped class in the game to deal with annoying sentry nests that prevent your team from pushing or defending an objective. Overall, the sapper is less impactful than some of Spy's other tools, but it still has an important job. The final tool Spy has at his disposal is the disguise kit. It isn't officially listed in his loadout when you go to change your weapons, but it allows us to disguise as anyone on the enemy team, or anyone on our team for that matter, which in conjunction with the Invis watch allows us to fool our enemies and cause some mayhem back. Whilst veteran players will sniff you out pretty quickly if you happen to have a poor disguise choice, it is still great for blending into your environment and can be super effective against newer players too. So look, in summary, we can assassinate single targets really well, we have a tool that allows us to sneak behind the enemy team with ease, we can disguise as enemies to cause confusion, and we're able to sap important buildings like teleports and the sentry, all with the goal of making it easier for our team to push the objective and ultimately win the game. Now if you ask me, all that seems pretty disruptive, which is why I think the label of Disruptor categorizes Spy's role on the team pretty damn well. Keep in mind though that this is Spy at his absolute simplest. When you start adding things like unlockable weapons and trick stabs into the mix, well, that's how you end up with a video that's over 3 hours long. But for now, and just as a quick little introduction, I hope Spy makes sense to people who haven't really played all that much TF2 before. So okay, with that out the way, I think it's time I give you a little sneak peek into how absolutely talented I was at Spy going into this challenge. You know, it's time you see the absolute trick-stabbing god and elite-level gaming master I was on day one of this challenge, and by that I mean, oh god, oh no, I really sucked hard in the beginning. Now, if for some reason you don't believe me in how utterly garbage at Spy I was, maybe this clip from my literal first game of the entire challenge can help to clarify things. We're here on Barman's, where I'm trying to get behind the enemy team, but I carelessly bump into the medic before decloaking, where I then proceed to miss not just one, not just two, but 3 backstab attempts in a row before receiving a lethal smack to the face by a VB long neck. I think this is a good place to start with the challenge and my Spy gameplay more generally, because the first of many shortcomings I noticed in my skills was my inability to lodge a butterfly knife into an enemy gamer's spinal, aka getting a backstab. For some reason, this was the first major hurdle I ran into, and it seems kinda silly to talk about, because, well, surely hitting a backstab is a pretty simple task, right? You have your knife, you walk up to their back, you press mouse 1, and voila, that should be a kill. But no actually, it often wouldn't be, as failing to hit backstabs was the first major issue I struggled with during this challenge. Take a look at this clip from day 5 on Snowy Coast, where I position myself in this nice little spot next to the barrels where the enemy team won't see me. Luckily, a demo man comes around the corner, so I walk up and I absolutely mince both stabs and fucking die. Now look, there's probably a few key reasons as to why I was failing so spectacularly at these seemingly super easy backstabs early on, as 1, I hadn't played all that much Spy before starting this challenge and was a little rusty, 2, I didn't have a good grasp of how the backstab hitbox worked yet, and 3, I struggled to predict how enemies would move around whilst I was behind them. I just didn't have the experience to quickly adjust my own positioning if an enemy suddenly strafed in a different direction, as we saw in that last one. So I'd often just end up tickling them with little stabs to their side, or even worse, I'd miss the stab entirely, meaning I was swinging my knife at literally nothing, which if you didn't know is actually the TF2 equivalent of shooting an airball. This issue did dissipate relatively quickly though, as with each day I'd gain more experience, so I'd shake off a little more of that thrust, and I'd become increasingly comfortable with Spy's core mechanics, meaning that fail stabs like this became much more of a rarity. I will admit though that even like 70 days deep into the challenge, I still had moments where I would absolutely butcher a backstab attempt, but again, they were much less frequent than they were in this first week. Now, it would be absolutely lovely if failing the world's easiest backstab attempts was the only issue I ran into in my early days of playing Spy, but unfortunately, I managed to piece together an entire laundry list of things I sucked ass at on Spy, and to introduce you to my next problem, just take a look at another clip I got on day 1, and see if you notice anything strange about it. So you might be thinking, hold on, the clip was a little messy, but there was a pretty decent couple of stabs in there, and your aim with the revolver was actually on point at the end, so What's the issue here? Well, if you take a closer look after my misstab on the sniper, you'll notice that I pull out my disguise kit for half a second, and then also manage to pull out my sapper before ultimately arriving at my revolver and actually getting the kill. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think that either of these items provide any offensive utility in the middle of combat, unless I plan to throw them at my opponent, so why am I swapping to them in the middle of a battle? Well, that brings us to the next issue in the elmaxo is awful at spy list, and this one sounds even more stupid than the last because it seemed I was unable to operate my keyboard like a normal human being when I was playing spy because, oh my god, was I mispressing keys and swapping to the wrong item.
Guys, it's time to fill in
items in the heat of combat so damn consistently. Take a look at this clip from day 2, where I'm on Dust Bowl, and I'm trying to do a little bit of acting to trick an enemy medic into thinking that I'm actually on his team. If you didn't know, you can press B whilst holding a weapon as spy, and this will swap what your disguise is holding, which can help to make you look more believable depending on what environment you're in. In this case, I press B whilst my sapper is equipped, so that my medic disguise swaps to holding their medigun. But instead of doing that, I managed to fat finger my keyboard and bring up this notification before being randomly critted and sent to fucking purgatory. I can't really say that I wanted to use my secret action whilst I was trying to convince an enemy that I was on their team, but apparently I clumsily pressed the wrong button and got myself murdered as a result. Luckily, this was similar to the fail stabs, as after I played more and more and my muscle memory improved, I was actually able to start swapping to the correct weapon during combat relatively quickly, which helped reduce the amount of embarrassing clips I found myself ending. But okay, it wasn't all bad when it came to my first 10 days of the challenge. This is probably a good point to introduce you to one of the most important skills there is to being a spy, and that is of course tricks. There are a lot of satisfying mechanics in TF2. You got stuff like crit flares, market gardens, crossbows, meat shots, air shots, headshots, ooh! Even saying their names just has your brain absolutely racing. But if there was a mechanic that I could put at the very pinnacle of that list, it'd be trick stabs, because there is just so much variety to what you are able to pull off. As I covered briefly earlier, Spy's whole shtick is that he 1. Gets behind his enemy, and 2. Gives him a good old shank to the back. However, there are situations where you won't be behind your enemy and may in fact be caught out with your metaphorical pants down. In scenarios such as this, you have to delve into your repertoire of trick stabs, which, as the name suggests, are reliant on your ability to trick your opponent